Before we get started with the video, I would just like to remind you that on Saturday, April 5th at 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, I will be doing a live stream, and I hope you will join in and ask questions that maybe I will or will not be able to answer. Just have some fun talking about audio stuff, or I guess, typing about audio stuff. So once again, that's April 5th at 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. If you were in the market for a power amplifier with large power meters back in 1988 for only $439, or about $1,230 today, you could have purchased a Proton AA-1150 Power Amplifier. It was rated at 50 watts per channel into 8 ohms at not more than 0.02% THD from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. And its frequency response over that range was listed as plus or minus 0.3 dB. We'll see how it performs a little bit later on in the video, but right now we will do a little tour. There's not a lot going on out front, not a lot around back, and we'll pop the cover and see what it looks like underneath the hood. Now, it came to me with a problem in that there was no output out of either channel. These guys apparently are known to have some bad speaker protect relays, and that was indeed the case with this unit. It's probably one of the easier repairs that I've made in a while, and amazingly enough, the speaker relays could be found on Amazon for about $5 for a pair, so you can't beat that. Once they were replaced, I started measuring it, and I was very impressed with how it measured. The power meters turned out to be off a little bit, but they're easy enough to adjust. There's a couple of trim pots kind of near them, and I adjusted them so that they were accurate. To me, it's just one of the better looking power amplifiers around. Aside from Macintosh amplifiers, I think this has one of the nicer looks. I mean, the Carver M500T has big power meters, but they're not backlit like these in the green. I know some folks have different color LEDs put in their Carver M500Ts, but this guy with the green just stands out right from the beginning. And I'll try to take a photo of it here in a little bit in the tour with the light stim, so that green kind of shows through a little bit. But in my opinion, it's very easy to see these big power meters, and they work rather well once they're calibrated. So right now I'm going to show a close-up of the front, and out back there's not a lot going on, and then I'll show what it looks like inside, and then of course there will be data on how it performed, and finally what I thought after using and listening to the AA-1150. Here is a close-up view of the Proton AA-1150. I've got it powered on, obviously, and you can see that we have our power switch here is lit so that it's a nice green color when it's powered on, and the displays for the meters look really nice. And you also have some LEDs here. There's a protection LED right here, and then there's a +6, +3, and 0 dB LED indicators, and you can see that our peak level is 0 here, and when our peak level 0 is reached, then the 0 would come on, and when +6 is reached, +6 yellow LED would come on. Now in my testing, it only got as high as having the +3 dB LED coming on, which would be this guy here. This obviously is the rear of the Proton. We have our gold-plated input jacks here, and then we have our 3-way binding posts right here. Here is a view looking down from the top with the cover removed. You can see that there are 2 toroidal transformers here for the power transformer, and then we have our filter caps here for the plus and minus B rails, and so it is indeed a dual mono power supply. The 2 speaker protect relays that were replaced are these guys right here. This is the bottom of the AA-1150, and you can just see we have our output transistors here, and you can see that it's fairly easy to work on and get at stuff. This, of course, is our standard THD SNR plot at 1 kilohertz, with the Proton putting out about 5 watts into 8 ohm loads. You can see the gain is about 25.3 dB. Our distortion is really, really good. We'll say 0.0004%, and SNRs are 96 dB, so this thing looks pretty good to start off with. Right now I've got the AA-1150 connected to 4 ohm loads, and we're putting out about 5 watts into those loads. If you look at the 8 ohm load data for the 5 watt case, you can see it's pretty much the same. The SNRs are a little bit worse in the 4 ohm load case, and that always happens when you go from 8 to 4 ohm loads. And the THDs are still looking pretty darn good. One of them's better, one of them's a little worse, but they're really, really low. Here is the Proton's frequency response from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, with it putting out about 5 watts into 8 ohm loads. The specification is that it should be plus or minus 0.3 of a dB, and we're not too far off from that. We're down, 0.4 of a dB at 20 kilohertz and up maybe 0.4 of a dB or almost 0.5 of a dB at 20 hertz. So overall, I would say that it is meeting its requirement. Here is the AA-1150's frequency response from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, with it putting out about 5 watts into 4 ohm loads. The frequency response looks pretty much the same as it did with the 8 ohm load case. At the high end of the band, though, with the 4 ohm load case, we're down 0.7 of a dB, whereas with the 8 ohm load case, we're down maybe 0.4 of a dB. So a little difference there. Same kind of shape, same kind of channel balance, and at the low end of the band, they both look identical. The Proton AA-1150 is rated at 50 watts per channel into 8 ohm loads at not more than 0.02% THD, and with our standard 1 kilohertz signal going in, it is doing much better than the 0.02% THD. SNRs above 96 dB, THD plus noise minus 96 dB, we'll call it. So overall, this thing is looking outstanding towards its specifications. I've increased the input signal level at 1 kilohertz to find out where the distortion gets really bad, and that's kind of right here at 0.6-0.7%, and our SNRs are about half of what they were at 50 watts, and it is putting out about 71 watts into 8 ohms. So it does have a bit of headroom. If you back this down just a little bit, it will operate quite comfortably. Let's go ahead and do that. So right here at about 64 watts into 8 ohms, it's doing real well as far as distortion. So it definitely could operate in the lower 60 watt range without any problem. Into 4 ohm loads, the AA-1150 is supposed to be able to put out 85 watts at clipping, and here you can see we're putting 93, 94 watts. No clipping going on. Our THD is not even 0.003%. SNRs above 96 dB, and THD plus noise is right around minus 90 dB. So we're a ways from clipping. I'm not going to run it any higher. It's exceeding its specifications. The specification for damping factor for the AA-1150 is greater than 150, and if we use the value at 1 kilohertz, we're at about 110. However, it really drops off at the high frequency down to about 25 or so at 20 kilohertz. Here is the Proton's Crosstalk from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. It does have a specification that at 1 kilohertz it should be at least 90 dB. So it looks like our right to left crosstalk is meeting that requirement here at 1 kilohertz at a little over 100 dB. The left to right crosstalk is a little shy at about, we'll say, 84 dB. Here we have the Harmonics for the AA-1150, with it putting out about 50 watts into 8 ohm loads. Kind of a mixed bag here. We have our third or odd harmonic. The right channel is lower than the second or even harmonic here. For the right channel, our left channel even harmonic is lower than the left channel odd harmonic. Here we have the Proton AA-1150's THD versus frequency for several different output power levels, and that would be into 8 ohm loads. Keep in mind the specification is that it should be better than 0.02% across the 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz range, and it is indeed less than 0.02%. And the power levels would be the minus 0.8 would be about 50 watts, and the minus 15.8 would be about a watt. The AA-1150 didn't have a specification for multitone, but here it is in case you were wondering. And it actually looks fairly decent. It's a bit over 13 bits of distortion-free range. Here's the Proton's IMD response with 19 and 20 kilohertz tones, and their levels have been adjusted such that we have a little over 5 watts into 8 ohm loads. What we're looking at are the sidebands here and here. Those are 1 kilohertz away from the tones, and those are down at about minus 90 dB from our peak here, and our 1 kilohertz difference tone is minus 100 dB. So using these guys here, a minus 90 dB level translates to about 15 bits of distortion-free range. Here we have the system noise level of the AA-1150, and its inputs are terminated into shorts, and it has 8 ohm loads connected to it. We're just seeing a little bit here, the 60 hertz hum bar, and it's down at minus 90 dBV, and then we're down below, say, 105 dBV. So it's probably going to be very, very quiet when it's hooked up to the Wilson Watt 3 Puppy 2 loudspeakers. In fact, I would be surprised if I even can hear that. I should mention that it's not a very heavy amplifier, weighing only about 25 pounds. And as you saw from the test data, it's a pretty solid performer. I would say it met the majority of its specifications. It was off a little bit around the edges for the frequency response. It was down maybe a tenth or two of a dB from the spec, but it's still pretty darn good. And it met its power requirements, no problem. It performed really well overall. As far as listening to it, I connected it to the Wilson Watt 3 Puppy 2 loudspeakers, and I terminate the inputs into the amplifier, and there was absolutely no hum or hiss or sounds coming out of the amplifier. I then connected the Carver C1 preamplifier up to it and a music source, and listened to music for a while and played pretty loud. I was able to hit 88 to 94 dB SPLs, and the power meter at one point was indicating plus 3 dB. There was no sounds of distortion or anything. It just handled the music quite well and didn't ever really get more than just warm at the top. It is a nice sounding amplifier. It just does its job as an amplifier. And it has a nice look. I do like the ballistics of the meters, and they seem to be, you know, pretty accurate and give you a good idea of where you're at with your listening levels. So for most people, it's probably a really good amplifier. It seemed to do quite well into 4 ohm loads, and it has a fair amount of headroom. That's probably because of their dynamic power headroom circuit, whatever it's, the DPD circuit I think it's called, and it seemed to work really well. So overall, if you were in the market for a vintage power amplifier with great big power meters and you cannot afford a piece of Macintosh gear, this would be a nice choice if you can live with 50 watts, really a bit more than that, which most people probably can. I did a quick search on eBay, and I saw one listed for $450 that was working. So they can be had for a reasonable price, I think, and that's kind of, you know, something to always keep in mind. You know, make sure that you have it checked out before you buy it. So that's kind of my take on the Proton AA-1150 Power Amplifier. I would recommend it wholeheartedly. I think it's a good performer, and you know, it looks nice. So once again, a reminder that on April 5th at 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, I will be having a live stream, and I hope you will be able to join that. Also, if you have not subscribed to the channel, I hope you will consider doing so. If you like the video, of course, thumbs up, and I'm always interested to read your comments, and I try to respond back to them as best I can. So until next time, I hope you have a great day or night.